Hi, this is Gregory Howard. Today is 9/28/2019, and this is 9/28/2019 video journal. Today I'm going to be playing videos on racism, white supremacy, the difference between black racism and white racism, uh, order followers, Mark Passio on order followers, government and authority, and I'm gonna have, and then a few random pictures that's going along with the thing. Also, Sally Sally B Hunt, Sally B Hunt explaining racism. I mean, I want her video on this because she explains racism, white supremacy very well, and so I'm going to have her explain it. So let's get to this video, and yeah, also the video also changed its size. So I'm been trying to work on that. I just can't fix it. I mean, I can't do anything about that. So let's just get started.
Racism,
Racism,
where your
where your
powers
powers
are. You
are. You
following
follow
me?
me?
And I'm
And
talking
I'm
about
talking
as a
about as a
group,
group,
not
not
an
an
individual, because
individual. Because
people said,
people said,
I
I
remember
remember
when
when
my
my
uncle
uncle
didn't.
didn't.
I'm
I'm
not
not
talking
talking
about your
about your
uncle.
uncle.
I'm
I'm
talking the
talking the
whole.
whole.
How many
How many
people
people
think
think
they
they
understand what
understand what
racism
racism is?
is? Show of hands. Come
Come
on,
on,
you think you know. I'm not suggesting I know. I just have a couple of definitions that kind of came to me as I thought about. How many people think there are white racists? That there are white racists out there? How many think there are black racists out there? Okay. Now, this is an interesting thing because this becomes important as we begin to define concepts. Now, I do that. I usually define concepts all the way. But one of the things that I do is I try to help people get a picture of what I mean by racism. So tell me how it is. I'm going to first category is white racism, then we'll deal with black racism. So white racism. Tell me the ways in which white racism adversely impacts the lives of black people. Just what are the ways that white racism can adversely impact the lives of black people as a group? What are some of those ways? I'm sorry? Power, but how is that defined specifically? Education, okay. I'm sorry? Economically, employment. What else? Housing, what else? Policing. Why are we here today? Healthcare, okay. Now, we could actually kind of grow that list. Now we're going to move over to black racism. Tell me the ways in which black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as an entire group. Thank you. The reason why you become silent, there's one that always comes up, and that's fear. White people are afraid of black people. They are afraid of us. And it's a very interesting thing because black people know it. We know white people are afraid. But you have to start getting into the psychology. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? But it's an interesting dynamic. Now, also you see the difference in what racism is, do you not? Racism implies you have not just prejudice, but the power to do something with that prejudice. Now, I don't like you, not only that, but I'm going to control whether you can get, I may say I hate you. I hate white people. I hate them. It's not going to change you getting that, loan when you go to the bank. I can hate you all the way to the bank. Not going to change. Do you see the difference? That whereas white racism says, not only do I not like you, but I'm going to change the impact of where you can live. I'm going to determine with that racism where your powers are. You following me? And I'm talking about as a group, not an individual, because people said, I remember when my uncle didn't. I'm not talking about your uncle. I'm talking about the whole group. I'm not talking about an incident. That's a difference. But white people are afraid. So let's get into how this fear impacts criminal justice. Because if white people in this room are afraid of black people, guess who else is afraid of black people? Only they have guns. So, now let's look at what he said. Simply put, white cops are afraid of black men. We don't talk about it. We pretend it doesn't exist. We claim color blindness. We say white officers treat black men the same way they treat white men, but that's a lie. And here's a big one. In fact, the bigger, the darker the black man, the greater the fear. Any big black men in here? You got a big old bullseye on you, even if you got the suit on. And it's the truth, because statistics bear it out. The African community knows this. Hell, most whites know it. Yet, even though it's essential, if not the defining ingredient in the makeup of police racism, white cops won't admit it to themselves or to others. He goes on to talk about actually learning it in the academy. Norm Stamper, he told on everybody. He had folks indicted. He now lives in a cabin on a mountain somewhere in the San Juan Islands. That's where he lives. Nobody knows where he lives because he knows they're coming after him, and they have. This is a statement from the book also. Race and class discrimination are all too real in every phase of the criminal justice system, from arrest to sentencing. Impoverished black defendants, and this is going to sound familiar to you, are far more likely to wind up on death row than richer middle-class whites, or the 3,000, and of the 3,700 inmates now awaiting execution nationwide, 43% are African American. Black defendants are not accorded the same due process rights as whites. Their cases are not given the same scrutiny and consideration afforded to white defendants. Not now, not ever, not in this country. This is what the man said. It was dismal. But he doesn't believe it's possible in the current system. So what we have to realize is we need to be realistic about that. So what I have to do is teach my sons how to navigate this, do I not? Doesn't matter what I think and, oh, baby, you know, we are the world. No, this is real. You do have a bullseye on you. When you're in the elevator with the only white woman there, and you're the big black man, she's clutching her purse and she's worried. That's a reality. And if you startle her too much, it used to mean you get lynched. Matter of fact, I think she could scream rape now and you'd get taken down.
It's not just in America, but everywhere we go, our people are dying. So the things that are in operation on this planet is that white people want to kill us. I want you to understand that. They want to kill you. And it has nothing to do with what kind of degree you have, what kind of car you have, what kind of title you have, what fraternity you belong to, what religion you belong to. They want to kill you because that is part of their plan.
White people's number one freedom in the United States of America is the freedom to be totally ignorant about those who are other than white. We don't have to learn about those who are other than white. And our number two freedom is the freedom to deny that we're ignorant. Today, we're going to take away these people's freedom to be ignorant. I want you to understand how the system works. And believe me, this is how the system works. We make laws to support white superiority and to reinforce white superiority. And when you catch on to how it works, then we change the laws.
I love how I act like black people. I love how I act like I love black people because I fucking hate niggers. So that's really interesting. I fucking hate niggers.
Racism against white people doesn't exist, and it literally never has. The entire concept of race was created by white people. When you begin to study the historical facts, you understand that this entire system of racism is white supremacy. It only goes in one direction. There's never been racism against white people. White Europeans created this idea of black as a way to dehumanize Africans, to subjugate them, to degrade them. Black meant less than human. It meant inferior. And then after they had that idea of black, they came up with this idea that they were, by contrast, white, which meant superior, more moral. That's what those words meant. That is why they were created, was so that white people could justify the entire system of slavery of Africans, so that they could have a justification for why the children of African slaves would also be slaves, why they would be born into slavery. It was because they dehumanized them with this concept of race. That's what racism is. It's always been that. It has always been white supremacy. And the thing is that our society, our government, never made things right, never leveled the playing field. So it's really never changed. Our society continued to produce racial inequality. It's what we've always done. The status quo of our society is white supremacy. It is racism, which is systemic. Systemic racism is racism. That's why there is no racism against white people. The idea is just utterly absurd. And what white people need to understand is that if there are people of color who are frustrated with white people, who are resentful and maybe distrusting of white people's motives, skeptical of white people, there's a reason for that. The reason is racism. The reason is white supremacy. Those people of color are merely reacting to racism. They're reacting to their entire lifetime's worth of experiences of enduring racism, racial oppression, as well as the lifetimes of their parents, their grandparents, their entire family. We cannot think that someone being mean to us as a white person, someone, being distrusting of us or having an attitude with us or making a statement about white people, we can't pretend as though that's the same thing as what people of color deal with, because it's just not. It never will be. That's our hurt feelings are not oppression. Our discomfort is not oppression. There's a reason why people of color might not trust us, and we have to get at the root cause. The root cause is racism. And so we need to speak up. We need to raise consciousness about our biases. The more we begin to understand that all white people are racist, the better off we'll be. And this includes me. I have racist biases. We all have racist biases. We've all been socialized, conditioned, brainwashed into the system of white supremacy. It is undeniable. All of us. This is the underlying structural foundation of our society. And if this makes you uncomfortable, that's okay, because that's part of the process. You feeling uncomfortable and maybe getting your feelings hurt and feeling like you need to be defensive, that's part of the process to get to a place where you accept reality and that you begin to speak up against systemic racism, which is racism, against white supremacy, and you begin to advocate for the changes that we need. Because again, our government has never made it right. White people created racism, created this inequality, and we've never changed it. We continue to perpetuate this status quo of racial inequality, of racist oppression, of traumatizing people of color. And we continue to invalidate and dismiss them and their experiences with oppression, with discrimination, with brutality, with abuse. This is a reality. And it's not saying that every white person has had a super easy life. That's not what white privilege means. But it is that we are not disadvantaged based on race. Our race is not a factor making our lives harder. It just isn't. We are not oppressed based on race. And that is a fact. Oppression is not a feeling. It is an undeniable fact. It has been throughout our history, and it continues to be to this day. The more you begin to learn about this, the more you realize you don't have to be defensive. It's okay. We are all racist. All of us white people are, and we are all conditioned, socialized, brainwashed into this system of white supremacy. It's part of our unconscious thinking. We need to raise consciousness. We need to understand our biases, and we need to begin to speak up and advocate for change. I hope you will do it. You don't need to be angry and uncomfortable with this. Facts are what they are. I encourage you to learn and read about this. PBS has a great video on YouTube called Origin of Race in the USA. And they have in their description a bunch of citations, links to scholarly articles and books. There's also an excellent video about, if you Google invention of race, there's an article on Eon written by a PhD scholar regarding how a playwright originally coined, I'm looking at it now, how white people were invented by a playwright in 1613 is the name of the article. And it is all about how white people normalize this idea of race and black and white in order to justify slavery. Slavery of Africans. And I'm not saying that other races didn't have slavery before. They did, but it wasn't based on racism or race. And it is the Europeans who came to America with the African slaves who came up with this concept of race. And this is a fact. Racism only goes in one direction. It is white supremacy. That's what it is. Let's speak up. Let's understand it. Let's stop being defensive. Let's stop being uncomfortable with this conversation. Thank you for listening and learning today. I appreciate it.
Order followers. These are the people who keep this system of slavery in place. Okay? They're the people who keep this system of slavery in place. Let me just say this again. Order followers are the people who keep the existence of slavery in place. Okay? Gubernare means to control. The verb gubernare in Latin means to control. The Latin noun mens, which is where the second part of the word ment is derived from, means mind. Okay? So you put these together, and the word government actually literally, from its etymological roots, means to control the mind. Authority ultimately is an illusion, again, of a diseased mind, a diseased psyche, based entirely in violence and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands and others are slaves who have a moral obligation to obey the commands of the masters. I don't care what you want to call it. You can euphemize it any way you want. I call it what it really is. Slavery. That's what it